Hi, everyone. Welcome to Here for the Health of It podcast. We have a great show today with serial entrepreneur and franchise expert Chuck Stovall, who owns Image Studios and used to own at least 20 different Boost Mobiles. He had 7 Massage MBs, 6 yoga studios, and now he's helping people find their perfect franchise. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Warren and Dillon, the Midland's trusted personal injury lawyers. Here's some great advice from our sponsor.
Hey there, Brett Warren with Warren and Dillon. I wanted to talk to you today about some of the biggest mistakes you can make when it comes to dealing with insurance companies. I think one of them is giving a recorded statement to the insurance company. The problem is that the insurance companies, they're doing these recorded statements to help their case and to hurt yours. And so they're going to ask some sneaky questions that are designed to hurt your case. One quick example, they'll ask how many feet away you were from the other car when you first noticed them. Nobody really knows the answer to that. But what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, you should have noticed that other car, and now you're 20% at fault. So do yourself a favor, just don't do it or talk to a lawyer first. Trusted advice, proven results, Warren and Dillon.
Hi, everyone. We have a great show today. This is Dr. Randy here with Dr. Tom, as always, and this is Here for the Health of It podcast, Columbia's hottest podcast. If you haven't gone and given us a review or liked our stuff, we're on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere. Just put in Here for the Health of It podcast. And I'm excited to tell you about our guest today. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's the owner of Image Studios. You've been a franchising expert for over 20 years. You were telling me you've had 7 massage MVs in the past, 20 T-Mobiles, 6 yoga studios. You've done a ton in the entrepreneurial space. So welcome to the show, Chuck Stovall.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So
It's Boost Mobile, by the way.
Oh, Boost
yeah.
Mobile.
Yeah, you remember
okay, I better
where
change
you at
that.
commercials?
Boost Mobile. I never really knew much about Boost Mobile, but I'm Canadian.
You remember the walkie-talkie phones?
Yes.
Those are sweet.
Yeah,
That was Boost.
that was Boost. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got into this whole world. It's a unique thing to be a franchising expert.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I always tell people.
Stay right in. Yep.
Yeah. So I always tell people my story is getting an entrepreneurship is like being passed over on, promotions. Like that was the thing, right? And I was always trying to follow that path of what everybody's doing: graduate college, and then just kind of put yourself into the corporate ladder. And and then like ultimately it was like passed over. I'm like, you know what? Like I can do this, and like I can go out and open up a business. I was in the cell phone world. That was my first job out of college. And so me and a buddy of mine, we went up to the mountains of Virginia and opened up a Boost Mobile store. And it was 800 square feet. The landlord shared a door with us, and we were just slinging cell phones out of this place, and we were the #1 store in America, and we just kind of got lucky, and ultimately we ended up growing to 20 stores across 5 states, and and we were just college buddies, and like so we were just trying to have a good time with it, and never really too stressful. We didn't have kids, and and it was just like a good pathway out of the corporate world.
Dude, there's so much to unpack there. But I want to. All right, tell me about West Virginia mountains. You must have had some characters coming in to buy a cell phone.
No doubt. Yes. I mean, look, they don't have good cell service up there. And so whenever there's a cell phone company in town that has cell service, they're all over it. And it was actually interesting. In all honesty, they don't really have good cell service. There was a company up there that built their cell service called Shintel, and they were actually leasing the cell towers to Boost Mobile. And so they were the only ones that had cell service. So like we were just opening up in the cities where they needed people to open up. They just provided the tower. So we kind of got lucky, and went up into where nobody else was willing to go up. And you could find people who were willing to work for lower wages up there because, like the cost of living and something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we got really lucky, and, we expanded down to Charleston and North Carolina. I mean, like, and ultimately, you know, like we were just getting broken into a lot. And so we decided, you know, like maybe we should, you know, like I was convinced it was the glass company that was doing it because like there's like I'd wake up and our glass was smashed and the glass guy's calling me, telling me it needs to be replaced.
I left the card on you.
And sometimes I haven't really been in the West Virginia mountains, but whenever I go to my wife's family in Indiana, sometimes we'll like be out in the Kentucky mountains, and they just speak a whole different language almost.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the cell phone doesn't matter. It can interpret it. You know?
It knows it.
Yeah, but, you know, in the West Virginia, we were in like the town where West Virginia College is, and like that whole place shut down. We couldn't even sell phones for like 2 days.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like we opened up a store right near the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't a good move at all. I mean, like people were trying to come pay their phone bill, and you know, sorry, we're shut down. You know, because the streets all shut down up there. You know, so it's a big thing. So
When you were describing today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Columbia Family Chiropractic, with 3 easy to get to locations: one in Forest Acres, which is by Trader Joe's; one in O'Neill Court by the DMV; and one in the Northeast by Sand Hills. You'll be sure to have somewhere near you. They offer a ton of services from corrective care, on-site digital x-rays, spinal decompression for bulging or herniated discs, dry needling for injuries, pediatric care, and a Class 4 laser. They accept all your major insurances. And if you mention this ad, you'll get a discount on your first appointment. Check out their website at cfc4health.com or Google Columbia Family Chiropractic. That's cfc4for health.com. Getting passed over promotions, I was picturing in Horrible Bosses. Have you seen that show?
Oh yeah,
Where they're like, this person has been excellent for the company, and like we know that this person's going to thrive, and he goes and he starts to stand up, and then they choose like someone with 2 years experience. She was like the 20-year-old blonde girl. They're like, oh, she's like, oh wow, I've only been here for 6 months, and they're like, okay, and then he just quits and loses his mind.
You know, like the best part about it is like even recently, like bosses that I had back then now reach out to me and like ask me like, hey, I've been laid off.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know,
no way.
I want to get into franchising, you know, and so like, you know, obviously I don't rub it in their face, you know, maybe a little bit, but yeah, but you know, it's fun to help people find business opportunities. I mean, like that's like you know, like I try to do it the right way and like try to really educate people. I've done it before. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people in my business that have not, you know, like they just broker businesses and, you know, say good luck. So
Yeah, they're the boss, but they've never really run a store. Or they're
right, exactly.
Yeah, they know what to do on pay. It's like a parenting expert who doesn't have any kids, or
yes, exactly.
a marriage expert that's never been married.
100%.
Yeah,
exactly.
So what are there franchises out there that you look at that the person doesn't need much of a skill set, they just need money? Or what are the features that you would say if you could build a perfect person that should get into buying franchises?
You know, like it's really kind of hard to put your finger on because, like, I don't like to tell people, like, hey, you're definitely not going to be successful, you know, like, you know, so like, you know, and you don't want to take the wind out of somebody's sails either, but, you know, like, you got to be a people person, you know, like that's kind of number one. You can't take the human element out of doing anything really, you know, like, and there's so many people that, you know, they have this association with franchising where, you know, they say, I want to own a Chick-fil-A or I want to do this. And, you know, and they envision that life, but they don't really know what it takes to get there. And they just think they can write a check and it was just all going to fall in their lap. And, you know, and that's just not the real expectation that you need to set for yourself. So, you know, being a people person is number one. You know, like you got to be able to manage different personalities, like different political views, you know, like everything, you know, like because you got a lot of different people that you're going to be associating with, you know, and it's a relationship business like any other business.
Right.
So, and then like urgency is kind of one, you know, like
speed at which you operate. Yeah.
Right. You know, like sometimes people just don't know what to do next. You know, like, what do I do next? And like, ultimately with a franchise, they give you this playbook, but there's these like other factors out there that you really need to get ahead of. And, you know, just like with you guys building this building here, you know, it's like, think about the things that just because you guys are smart, you know, that you knew like, hey, this is something that we need to do. Like somebody didn't just show you. Right.
Right.
And not everybody has that.
Sure.
So,
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And we were on top of them constantly, and they still put light switches in the weirdest places. Like, no matter how much diligence, you still have to deal with something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're not holding their hand, it's over.
And then I guess is there, and I've never really looked into franchises, but it's always been something that's cool, like as a thing. Are there key factors that you would recommend if somebody's even just starting to glance into the space? What metrics, what things do you look at to know if a franchise is a good option?
So, it's a good question. So, everybody kind of has like a different criteria on like what they want.
Yeah.
And so like obviously people want to make money.
Yep.
Like, that's clear. Okay. Like we know that's why you're calling me. All right. But like what does that look like? And so there's a lot of people who are in career transition that may have like 2 or 3 kids at home and like they need to make money right away.
Right.
Like, hey, I have this standard of living. I've been making $150,000 a year and like I've got to make that or, I can't do it. And like that's really hard to overcome, know? And so even if I show you a business and it says it makes money, like you're still going to be met with this fear of like, can I do it? Right. And so, it kind of what I do is like, I'm like, hey, let's not look at franchises for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. And like, let's think about what is it that you're really trying to do? And let's work backwards from there.
I like that.
And so, and usually when we go through that exercise, then that helps me figure out which franchise is a good fit for them or maybe franchising isn't a good fit for them, And so then we start to look at like ownership characteristics, like what type of owner owns a HVAC company? What type of owner owns a spa? And then we start to dive into different businesses that way.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times people get met with this fear really at the end of it. And like, that's the hardest part to overcome for people is like just getting into business ownership for themselves. And so, validation is kind of what we call it in the franchise consulting world, where you want to talk to existing franchisees, the people who live it every day, and so if you can put yourself in a position to talk to as many of them as you can during your due diligence period, then the more information that you get and the more comfortable you become with making this decision. So, but yeah, man, there's so many, there's thousands of franchises that are out there. And whenever somebody comes to me, I'm showing them 3 and then, I'm like, that's all you can really look at one time. They're like, oh, well, you didn't show me Chick-fil-A. I'm sorry.
Chick-fil-A we have a friend who has one, and it just seems like it's a mountain to climb to even be considered for a franchise there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories, about like how to do it. Like who do you know? And the ones that I always hear are like you got to start as a fry cook.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
And then like you kind of have to go through a pretty strenuous
maybe work your way up to trainer.
Exactly. Right. And it's cheap to get into it. It's like $10,000 considering, it's like $10,000 to get
Entry
in.
Point, yeah.
But ultimately you don't really own the business. Like that's kind of the biggest difference.
Right,
Like as soon as you retire, like that Chick-fil-A is not closing up and and you get to hang your hat and say goodbye.
And you're not selling the Chick-fil-A
Right,
either.
and
You
you're
just
not-
walk away from it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's what and even in the Chick-fil-A world too, your things that you have to do are intense. Like you have to live within a certain distance. You have to be there a certain amount of time.
No doubt.
Whereas my understanding is McDonald's, you could just pay for it.
Right.
And then I could buy one in West Virginia if I wanted. They
Right.
don't care. I could just run it however I
Yeah,
want.
most McDonald's owners own like 8 to 12 of them.
Yeah.
If you're a Chick-fil-A, it's like 2, maybe 4 if you're lucky.
Right.
And like I'll always tell my candidates I'm working with who want a Chick-fil-A, like I'm driving up 95 to go see my family. I'll pull off in Lumberton or something, and then like I pull off and I go into the Chick-fil-A, like there's the owner like holding the door for me.
Right.
And like I'm like, is that what you want to do? Or like so it's a strange world out there. The franchising world is super strange.
So your world in the consulting side of it is you essentially meet with a person to say they're interested in getting into franchising. You then get their goals, kind of work backwards from that, supply 3 or so that you're like, these seem to be good fits. Let's dive into each one of these to see if it's worth pushing your chips in.
That's right.
And then do you connect the dots to with the franchise to say like, all right, this is the one we're choosing, and now let's sign and get ripping?
Yeah, so like my goal in the whole process is to be a matchmaker,
Yeah.
And then, usually like post them signing, like I'm still there, but I'm not helping past that point for
Right.
the most part. They are buying into a system and processes, and they're getting coaches and that type of thing. But I'm basically those 6 weeks that they're doing research, I'm there side by side with them as they start to educate themselves around different concepts. So,
And then how much legal's involved, like reading the fine print of these things? Or is that more that's kind of where you're helping?
yeah, so I'm not an attorney on record. But yeah, there's definitely hire an attorney at the end of the process. So like, very early on in the process, you're going to get a big document. It's like 180 pages,
They're
right?
insane, yeah.
Right. And so it's like, hey, like that's important, but maybe not as important right now as like, is this a good fit?
Right.
And
Right.
so like, don't stress yourself out over 180 pages, if ultimately you don't want to sell flooring,
Yeah.
or if you don't want to be in this type of business, like there's no need to stress out about it. But if you get to the end and you're feeling good about it, then you're going to hire an attorney and they're going to review the document with you. So, yeah.
I'm just trying to think of all the franchises, and there's so many things. But this is super fascinating to me. I don't think I've ever met someone who does this.
I know. It's
rare.
funny. Like in my world, I feel like we're crowded. I'm like, man, they're everywhere. They'll let anybody do this. And then, and I'm like, which sucks because like, like I try to come from a good place. Hey, I've done it 4 times, and then next thing you know, Megan with a realtor degree, or whatever they have, they're just like, hey, I'm going to start selling franchises.
Yeah.
I'm like, that girl's never owned a franchise, and, so, but her mom did or something, and, but yeah, it is a fascinating world. It's really cool when you see people be successful, especially people you place, and then you see like, oh, you did, that amount of revenue. Like, man, that's awesome. And you actually see their dreams come to fruition, and, and they even get it another way. Like, somebody I had a call with a guy on a gutter business, and he's like going to do $3 million. It's like his second year in revenue. And he's like, man, I just got to get out of this business. I was like, got exactly what you wanted,
Right.
So could you take us through the process a little bit of what it would look like? So say we're like, hey, we want a franchise. We don't know what we want. We know we don't want to be in fast food or something unhealthy, like that would make people unhealthy.
Sure.
But we want, and we don't have a ton of time. We got more things than we know what to do with
Right.
on our plate right now. What would be like the process, or what kind of direction would you steer us?
So like I give you homework essentially, and that helps me weed out the people who aren't really serious.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of times people just want to pick my brain. They say, hey, what's the hot franchise?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't got a crystal ball,
Right.
And so really the process is designed to help you reflect on yourself and whether you're really built for business ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like franchising isn't really about building a business on your passion. It's really about building a business so you can spend more time on your passions. Like that's what franchising is supposed to be. So like if you own a roofing company, or if you own a spa, or if you own a cell phone company, like I didn't wake up one day saying I can't wait to sell Boost Mobile, or I want to open up a salon. Like that's not my passion.
Yeah.
Like I like golf. I like spending time with my kids, and like those are the things that I want to do, and I have assets that are generating me income, so it allows me to do those things. And so, like a lot of times people will say, hey, I don't want to buy a job, or and like I don't want to do these, XYZ. And that's okay. So we'll try to narrow it down based on like how they envision they want to live their life. But kind of the business is almost secondary. I'm like, hey, these are the best options in Columbia that have really good founders. Like the people have a good place in their heart for their franchisees. They want to see them be successful. And, they have good economics, but like we're not going to be able to find the exact business. I'll like joke with my candidates sometimes where they're like, I'll say, hey, we can't treat this like a dating app. You know, like if you're going to keep swiping because their eyes aren't green, like we're going to have a problem. You know, like that she has a great personality, you know, she's, you know, but like, you know, like that's the way people want to treat it, you know? So we have to have like, do you really want to get married? You know? And so, you know, like I just really kind of give you guys homework, or my candidates homework, to really help them decide whether franchising is a good fit for them. And then we'll look at the businesses, you know? And the hardest part about what I do is like showing people, you know, like, hey, here's your 3 options. And they're like, what?
Thought they'd be better than that. I thought I was a 10 out of 10 on this dating app, and you're giving me 3s.
Exactly. You know, that's what they think, you know? And so, you know, but it's hard, you know, like it's hard because like I know what these companies do. I know the people behind the business, you know, and like sometimes people really want the sexy business, you know, they want the Botox place or the testosterone, or, you know, like they want that stuff.
The strip club.
Yes, right. You know,
I love that.
Yeah, they want that stuff, and like I'm like, yeah, well, you know, if you don't want to make money, you know, and like you could sell that stuff all day,
right?
You know, but you know, you got to try to do right by the candidate, and so like, you know, even if that means you take some L's, you know, like that's just, you know, you just kind of got to stick true to my process, you know. So
yeah, that's good. What's the fastest start to meeting with you and then somebody signing the paperwork? What's the fastest you've seen somebody do that?
Oh man, 2 weeks. I mean, I've
Really?
seen people fall in love with stuff pretty
Just
quickly.
married already.
Yeah, you know, and you know, like they'll just the franchise will typically have a discovery day, is what they call it.
Yeah.
And if you get like a franchise that has like a lot of momentum, a lot of people who are looking at it, then they'll get on the call, and like their sales pitch even kind of goes out the window because they have so many people that are looking at it. And they're like, hey, if you're interested in Charleston, you're going to have to come to Discovery Day next week because we have like 5 other people who are looking at it. And then people are like, all right, I'm coming. And, you know, and so.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it just depends on, you know, we don't get those very often. I mean, you know, we had a men's testosterone clinic and a mental health concept that broke all types of records and had people just lined up waiting to buy it. But, you know, we don't get those too often. Yeah. So, but it's typically 4 to 6 weeks. It's very average.
Okay.
Yeah. And
still seems like fast.
Yeah, very fast.
Yeah. Well, you know, it doesn't mean you're open.
Right.
And so like, yeah, it just means that you're like, hey, and the reason for that is like, you know, if you're thinking about getting into a franchise and you're looking at places like, you know, again, Charleston or Raleigh or Charlotte or Nashville, like you have hundreds of people who are looking, you know? And so like what's available like this month is not going to be available next month. So you really have to insert yourself on this highway of people and put yourself in line and really have your own process in place to eliminate opportunities and find the right one for you, you know? So that's why it's good to work with a consultant, you know, sometimes, but sometimes people just think that they know what they want, they'll work on their own, and that's fine too. But, you know, but we have a process, you know, so.
And then how do you, so in your consulting, do they pay you directly just to help them find it, or do you get a piece of the deal you put together? How does that work for you?
So I wish I charged sometimes, but so we work like a recruiter is the best way to kind of, you know, have an analogy to it. Yeah. So if we place somebody, then we get paid a referral fee. And our referral fees are pretty flat across the board. So you can go buy a $2 million trampoline park, or you could do a coaching business, and they're pretty much the same referral fee. So it's not going to, you know, really dictate whether I put you in a trampoline park or not. You're like, hey, I only have $100,000. I'm like, hey, go buy Sky Zone. Like, it's, you know, doesn't really work that way.
Yeah. So. That's what I was curious about, because you have to have money to put down when you get a franchise. Yeah. And it can range, I'm sure, from $5,000 to $5 million, depending on the size of the franchise.
Right. Yep.
What's the normal? What are the ranges? Like, is there 5 to 25 and 25 to 50,000?
Yeah. So if you are, most people I help end up in the service-based business. Okay. So where they're providing a service to people without a storefront, and that's mostly because people are looking for options where they can cash flow quickly. So if you were to open up a storefront, and just think about this place. How long did it take you to build it, right? Yeah. So most people are like looking to generate income quickly. Maybe you can buy a truck and some equipment, and then you can start producing income. So like typically those are going to fall like sub 350,000, like anywhere from 100 to 350,000. Just it really depends. I mean, you could get into installation and you're going to need all types of trucks and equipment,
Right.
Or you could just get into kitchen remodeling and you sub everything out. I mean, there's you kind of got everything.
Yeah.
So, that one you're up and running like 90 days, and you're not spending as much money, and you have the ability to make as much money as somebody that spent $2 million on a trampoline park,
Right.
But I would say if you're getting into brick and mortar, like a storefront, it's going to be at least $500,000 for the most part. There's very few exceptions. There are some, but very few exceptions. So.
And you have to have it all up front, or it needs to be a certain amount, and you can cash flow it.
Yeah, so most of them are SBA approved.
Yep.
So most people get an SBA loan where they're putting 20% down on whatever that number might be, and so that whole number, that $500,000, is usually going to be really an all-in number on working capital and whatever else you might need to keep the business going for 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So.
Your typical person, age, like guy, girl, age bracket, are like the younger kids into franchise? Is it more older? Is it kind of middle age?
Yeah, it's really all over, but the people who usually move forward are like mid 30s, mid 40s,
Need something fresh.
Yeah. Like I get a lot of calls from guys who are like unhireable because they're 59.
Right.
And they're like, do I really want to go back into the corporate world? I get a lot of those calls, but like, it's really hard for them to, cause like, they're eyeing retirement,
Right.
And so they're like, okay, is it time to risk my retirement?
Right.
Like,
Roll the dice.
yeah, it's like, it's a tough time to risk it, but people do it, but it's just harder for them. And like, whenever I get, like I get a lot of like young couples, they just had a baby, or they're, just starting their life. And, the husband is just like, he has that motivation. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to work for anybody anymore. Like, let's go find something. And those are the ones that typically move forward.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The franchise world is pretty litigious too, isn't it?
yeah, no doubt. Yes. I mean, it's, they promised me this, they didn't come through on this.
I thought I was just going to not work and just everybody else
Right.
does everything for me.
No doubt. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, just like with anything, I mean, like it's, where you get people involved that don't feel like they held up their end of the deal, and, and again, like, that's why you have the FDD. It typically lists out, whether they're being, sued or not. And it's really not in the best interest for the franchisor to get into those lawsuits because it's just a bad look, like the franchisees are your customers. Like if you start suing your customers, it's not good look. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it definitely happens, and you get like, when you start looking at, like we have like some consultants that like have this analogy of like, you're all on running the same race. You're all on this road. You got people that break the tape first, and you got people that come in last.
Yeah.
But everybody's running on the same road, and like, are you more like the person that finished first? Or are you more like the people that finished last, And that's just every system. Every franchise system has that. You have people that are failing, and you have people that are super successful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of when I ran my marathon. It was the worst. Oh,
You ran a marathon?
Dude, I look at myself as if I'm in the 1% because only like 1% of people actually run a marathon.
Okay.
But of the people who were running the marathon, I was the guy who was coming in way last. I lost by 7 to 8 miles,
Wow.
and it hurt.
But like this, but you did it.
That's exactly what I think. Sometimes I think about franchisees where it's like, oh, you're the worst of this group, but this group is already ahead of everybody else who's can barely make it to work at 9 and sits there and does nothing half the day.
Right.
Versus like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders trying to manage employees and make this thing run. Marketing, finance, all that.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
So tell us about your current deal is Image Studios.
Yep.
Tell us of that model, kind of how that one operates.
Yeah, so us guys probably don't typically visit these types of places. These are like salon.
Tom does.
I love a good Tom.
Yeah, so they're essentially a place for beauty pros. Like, so if you do hair, like makeup, you do esthetician services,
Nails.
Yes, some nails. Like we don't have the proper exhaust for nails, like in our place. Like that's a thing. We can do like dips and stuff like that. I'm sure you know all about that. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It burns my fingers when I do the dips.
So yeah, it's so we can. It's essentially for them a place to come and run their business. And so we don't really do their marketing. Like they usually come to us because they have an established business.
Okay.
And they want to, service their existing clients. Usually, that's and so like we have ladies that are in there that are just busy, like Monday through Saturday, booked, and they do no marketing, and a lot of it's word of mouth, and like the women will just go wherever their hairstylist goes, and so that's mostly what it is, that we just kind of offer a place. So, like, the people who laid the tracks for this were a company called Sola Salon.
Sola, I've seen that.
Yeah, and Sola was originally, I believe they started in Texas, and I'm probably wrong on that, but it's a really big model in Texas, is the Sola Salon Suite. And so Image kind of came in, and they were like, hey, we don't really think that just the drywall on the doors is going to cut it. We want to be able to offer these beauty pros a higher end feel,
right?
So we have like nice chandeliers. You walk into Image Studios and they have the curved glass, and so it looks super modern. Like everything's really high end, really nice, and so that way, like, it's a little bit more expensive to rent from Image Studios, but the idea is you can start to charge your clients more,
right?
And you can justify your pricing. If Sherry's coming in to go see Megan, and Megan's charging her $400 to get her hair done, but she's doing it in her closet. Like, I don't know. Let me bring in Image Studios, and it's just a higher end feel. We got a lot of natural light. We have a lot of window suites where people get, the sunlight and stuff like that. So it's a cool experience. And also, the Bull Street area is just rocking.
Yeah.
And we were like, I think we were like the second or third place to open up in there,
really?
And like we're right next to Publico.
Yeah.
And, the whole idea down there is to have this city feel where people are just like walking their dogs. They can come and get their hair done. You have the apartments, you have all the townhouses. We have the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
So it's a good vibe. It's like a lot of positive energy down there. And it's like, so it's a lot of fun, and I try to tell that to the beauty pros who we're recruiting to come in. Like, that's the vibe. It's the city vibe. If you're just looking for somebody to pull up in their handicap spot and walk into your salon, like, it's probably not going to work here. Like, this place is like for the, you got a lot of college people down there, people who want to come in and, get their hair done, get their nails done, get their facial, pop over to Starbucks, maybe go over to REI, get some shopping done, go to P-Volve and get, go to fitness and like live that city life. And so I think that's what they're trying to do with, the Bull Street. We have Gather that's opening up there in a couple months.
Yeah, that's going to be sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool.
That whole area is dynamite. So do you guys then own the space? It's almost like this is going to sound bad, like you're the landowner of a trailer park facility. High end,
a higher end trailer park.
Yeah. I don't know how you got to that,
but yeah. So no,
not at all.
Yeah. So we don't own the model works if you can own the building. Yes.
Yeah.
So if I could own the building, that'd be great.
Even better. Yeah.
Even better. But it's hard to find a space, without erecting it from the ground,
right?
That really works. That has like all the windows and has the right. So whenever it comes to our concept, it's like even when it comes to the franchise advising side of this, because I have a lot of people asking me why I had all the franchises to choose. Why did I choose Image? Right?
Yeah.
And no employees was kind of.
That's nice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's nice. I don't have to worry. Like, did we open up today? Like, I don't know. Did we? It doesn't matter to me. So, so it's like the no employee model, but it's really tough to make it work mathematically. Okay. Because, all your costs are pretty fixed. You have your rent, and then how much rent you bring in, and then you have like your utilities. I mean, it's like a math equation. So like once I'm fully booked, like I can't go run a special and go generate more revenue. Right.
Yeah.
And so so it's really tough to make the numbers work. And, so you really have to find a unique spot that has cheaper rent. And Bull Street by no means had the cheaper rent, but it's a cool area, and their rent just kind of worked right within our range where we could make it work, you know. But it's a very difficult concept to make work, to find the right real estate. So if you were to buy a franchise and you were to get the Image or something similar, then you're going to be, tied to whatever market you bought and whatever real estate is available at that time. And so real estate is going to really kind of dictate when you open, and how quickly you can find something. And that's not always like within people's timelines. So even though you signed 6 weeks in after working with me, you may not be open for another 2 or 3 years, So it could take some time.
Yeah, that's the hard part for a lot of like single person business owners is the space, because they don't want to sign a lease. They don't necessarily need 1,500 square feet, but that's all that's available usually that a landlord will rent. I know I've dealt with a bunch of massage therapists in the past, and like sometimes they're like, oh, I don't need to be renting a space. I can do it out of my house. And then I don't keep 100%. And then like their dog is licking their client's hand while they're getting a massage. And you're like, this was not a good idea.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, they don't really have to worry about anything either. So you're basically taking a lot of the risk of a long lease and fixed overhead. And then you're spreading out the risk. And then they take some of the risk of they have to get a person in, but they're not locked into a 10-year lease and a massive overhead.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's even like I was in the massage envy business for quite some time. And so like even massage therapists is tough, it's like, it's tough to get those reoccurring, like those people that like to come in all the time. And, like that's kind of why it worked for massage envy, because you have like what we call a nuisance fee, where it's like you're hitting everybody like every month, you know, like this membership, and then people are like, I gotta go get a massage. I got like 7 credits, you know, and so like, that's why it works for massage envy. But when it's like, hey, I can pay or I can not go, it's hard for it to work as a massage therapist.
Yes.
So.
Do you? So there's a book. What's it called? I think it was in E-Myth, maybe, where it almost recommended not being capable of doing the job that you own the franchise of, like hair salons. Like I couldn't go in and cut hair because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Right.
And it forced you to just be out of the business, looking at it from basically to be able to scale it and grow it.
Yeah.
Is that more? Do you like people coming to you that have that don't know anything about the industry that they're looking at, or more so people that would kind of enjoy that or can do the industry?
Yeah.
Or does it matter? I mean, I guess it depends on what they like.
Yeah. Like I think people think this, okay? So like they come to me and they're like, I have a cybersecurity background. Do you have a cybersecurity franchise? You know, or like, I'm like, no, like, or I have an IT background. I get a lot of IT. I just want to do IT. Can I do an IT franchise?
Yeah.
And it's like, again, that's not what franchising is about, right? Like I'm not buying you a job or finding you something to buy for a job, right? And if I even were to be able to find this, you're going to criticize the hell out of it.
Right.
Right. And you're going to be like, oh, no, they should have done it this way and they should have done it that way. So it's almost good to be aloof to it, Just like, I don't really know anything about it, And like, again, that's the hardest part about me showing brands to people. Like, I've never been on a ladder. You're telling me I need to, I can do gutters,
Right.
And what they're looking for, these franchisors are looking for people that are business minded. They're looking for somebody that can run a business, that can put people in place to run the business. And so whenever you're evaluating the franchise, they're in return evaluating you. And, and that script will flip on people like towards the end, where they're kind of feel like, oh, I'm being sold a franchise right now, and then like they get like 5 or 6 calls in, and then next thing you know, they're talking to the founder, and the founder's like, all right, can you do this? And they start to interview, and they're like, whoa, like I didn't know that I was going to pass the test here,
Sure.
Yeah. So that's what the good ones do at least.
So, and I still don't quite feel like I know what it is to be a franchisor, meaning like there's a chunk of money that goes to the people who are licensing it to me. And then there's a certain job that I have to do, but is it mostly hiring people? Is it oversight? Is it what's the main? You have to be a people person. I know you told is that, but I still can't like wrap my head around what would be required of me if I bought a franchise.
So it's going to depend on the franchise, right? Yeah. And so, I always tell people you're going to be doing the grunt work, whatever it is that you're doing for at least 6 or 8 months, whether you want to or not, you got to do it because then you can't hire for it. Like if you want to hire, like obviously I'm not going to go get my massage license, but like I'm going to be up front selling memberships,
Right.
and I'm going to be up there talking to people and like understanding how the business works, but so like what your job is as a franchisee is to really understand your business and understand what levers you need to pull, and then hiring for what the positions that you are unable to do, or whether you don't have those strengths. It could be sales, it could be marketing. The franchisor is going to, the parent company is going to do a lot of your marketing for you, but like you need to go out into the community and generate your own business as well. Right. So it's going to depend on the business, and like whether you can hire somebody to fill a role for you, whether that's brick and mortar or whether that's going to be a service business. But again, it's like, understanding, like having that urgency to understand what you need to do, and like a lot of times, like nobody really knows, but like you being able to figure out this puzzle, is like part of being a good entrepreneur, like, hey, we have franchising is like a puzzle that's like 30% solved.
Yeah.
Like, can you go solve the other 70% of it?
Yeah. That's good.
Right. And
there's a piece missing sometimes.
No doubt. Right. Yeah. It's a corner piece.
So in all of the franchises you've owned, when did you know to exit? How did you look at it that way? Like,
that's a good question. So I get this a lot. People are like, well, why'd you leave it? You know? And, there comes a point where whether it's an industry or whether it's like pressure from like other franchisees. So like ultimately in almost every franchise system, you have this like infancy stage of like people who are buying, getting open, and then once people kind of get open, then everybody kind of sits back and see how's everybody doing, what's everybody doing for revenue, like who's growing, who's not growing. And then you start to kind of get a sense of like who wants to accelerate, who wants to accelerate their growth. And so, like whenever we sold our Boost Mobile stores, like we had 20 and the guy who bought us had 120. And we were the second biggest in the country and we're having 20. And so he was like, and we were like, all right, this guy is ready to go. And so like in that moment, like I had convinced myself at least that, like I wanted to create more opportunity for the people that helped us get to 20. Like it was just me and my college buddy and we had some fun and we got to 20 and let's just call it a ride, and like that was fun. And like, let's just say, let's end at the top here instead of like going to go try to take over the world. Because you're also uncertain about, like in the cell phone world, like, where's Boost Mobile going to be in 5 years,
Right.
And so, we sold to them, but then also with the caveat that our top people were going to have, an opportunity for them to continue to grow their careers. Like one of my best stories that we have is like we offered a girl a manager's job, which paid like probably $14 an hour at the time. Yeah. And and she had just overdosed on like heroin or something like that, like up in the mountains of West Virginia. Yeah. And we had no idea, but we offered her the job, and she wrote us a letter after we sold and said that we saved her life. And like she became like one of our regional managers. She moved down here. Yep. But we had no idea. Like we had no clue that she was even on drugs. Like, we wouldn't have offered her the job.
It's like your criteria for managers. That's amazing.
It's like, hey, can you show up to work on time? I think so. All right, manager.
Yeah. Do you have a friend? Assistant manager.
Yes. So nowadays, do you have any sort of team, or who's your people?
That work for me?
Yeah, or
Yeah. So it's just me.
Is she okay?
Yep. It's just me and my wife. My wife comes up here, and like we visit Columbia a couple of times a week. And like we have some business partners that we're planning to expand our portfolio and open up, a multitude of image studios across South Carolina. But me and my wife are the face of the business.
Love that.
Yeah. And so it's just us. And
Now, how did you land your wife?
oh man,
I haven't seen her, but I've heard that she's way better looking.
yeah, she's way better looking than me. Yeah. I bought her beer when she was underage. That's how I did.
In the mountains of West Virginia.
Way after that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, are you from?
was that your like pickup line? Like, hey, you thirsty?
And when she was like, I pulled up in my buddy's driveway, and she like came walking out. And she was like, "Can you buy beer?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." Like, that's yeah.
So what's the age gap then? Can you tell that?
Yeah, it's 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
6 years, it starts getting a little sketchy.
Yeah, right. 20, like,
Dude, you know what I saw yesterday, and I didn't realize this. Tommy Fleetwood's wife is 23 years older than him.
Oh, so did you see his like stepbrother is like 47
Yes.
or something like that?
I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, no. I was
That
like,
didn't make sense.
I think they did it for viewership. It's like the Live Championship was on at the same time. And just trying to like spice it up a little bit.
All right. So are there pieces, I guess everything's always franchise dependent, but are there pieces or team members or things that you recommend that a person get in place, like operations or an accountant or...
Yeah, I mean, attorney and accountant.
That's the main-
I mean, like an accountant for sure. It's somebody who understands business, because like the tax benefits of franchising are, probably the number one reason I opened up image studios. And it was like you being able to have an avenue to build wealth that's not you writing a check out to somebody. And so like people are kind of in this mindset of annual income. Like this is how I think about everything. How much am I going to make a year? Right. Like, and you kind of have to shake people from that. Like, hey, that's not what business ownership is about. Like, you're not going to just have a check deposit every 2 weeks. And so, and one way to see the benefits is to be able to have an accountant that understands like what type of write-offs and what type of deductions you can take, know? And so having just, those type of people in your back pocket, owning a business, you're always going to need an attorney, somebody that you can call like for anything. I mean, it's almost to the point, like I tell my attorney I hate him, and
Because he charges you so much, or because he's a jerk?
Well, it's just because like, if I'm talking to him, then it's never good, And I've told him like every time I walk in there with a commercial lease, I'm like, tell me not to sign it. Just give me like 10 reasons why I shouldn't sign this.
Yeah.
And the bad part about being an attorney is that you want me to sign it because you know it's going to bring another 20 problems, That's just like 10 more years of business for you, dude.
That's right.
If he tells me no, then, he's losing business.
Right. That's it.
Well, and attorneys aren't always business minded. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they also just did college, more college, went to work for somewhere, and that's all they've done. So I found that often they haven't even necessarily run a business, and they see the numbers. They're very smart about that, but they haven't run a business before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So be careful with the ones that have, or know about it.
They know what to do.
They know what to do, you know?
And then what type of it? Is it contract law or what kind of...
So it's going to depend on what stage you're at and what kind of advice you need, But like, I think it's always good to have just a general business attorney, somebody who can review leases, somebody that can review contracts, somebody that kind of knows the ins and outs of like, even construction contracts and stuff like that. Like there's so many different things that kind of get thrown your way. If you have employees, then you're going to need employee assistance. And so sometimes these law firms will even have different people like within the firm that specialize in different stuff. Those are typically the more expensive ones, but somebody that just has some knowledge.
Nice.
But yeah, a lot of contract law until you get into litigation. I mean, like, which is ultimately the one thing that you want to avoid. But like, there's specific attorneys that can handle litigation, who can throw their weight around a little bit more, and who have a reputation. Yeah. And so but you want to avoid those guys, because those guys are sharks, and so if you can, again, stay away from litigation. It's the worst.
Nice. So if you look at, and you may not be able to say this or may not want to, but if you look at like a franchise agreement, maybe you didn't broker it, but you heard of it, where the person who got into it just got hosed. And then maybe on the other side, where somebody that you're like, why did the franchisor give such good terms to the franchisee?
Sure.
Because I'm sure there's every extreme in between there, but I'm just curious what would be like a deciding factor on one side or a deciding factor on the other.
So for me, as far as like referring people to a business, or just
just anything you've heard of, maybe.
Sure.
Because I'm sure people come to you with horror stories, or you talk to the guy who's making $3 million and he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's just kind of like laughing his way to.
So fee structures and like contract structures are kind of like part of the evaluation process, to where like it's just another number. So like, let's say that you're looking at a dumpster business, for an example, and they're charging 10% royalties, but they're booking all your calls, and they're, handling all your estimates, and they're doing everything for you, where you essentially do not have to even hire a back office person. Then maybe the 10% is worth it. Maybe, I don't know, that's ultimately for them to decide, like the person, the candidate. And then you're looking at other concepts that may only have 5% royalty, and it's cheaper to get into, but they don't offer as much, And so, what you really need to evaluate whenever it comes to a franchise is like, how quickly can they get your revenue numbers up? If you were to open up a dumpster business, or if you were to open up a pressure washing business, or whatever, a roofing business, and you were just to start from scratch, how quickly is it going to get you to, how long is it going to take you to get $1 million? How long is it going to take you to 2? How long is it going to take you to 3? Right. And, then you can kind of put that up against the franchise system and say, okay, how quickly can they do it? And is it worth it? Is it worth the money? And then I think what you'll find is that some people have made it worth it, and some people think it's too expensive. And so it's just really, it's candidate dependent, how smart they are, and like, I think, it's like sometimes like people who are just like, like they don't really know better, and it sounds crazy, but like they don't, like they sometimes are more successful because they let the system work. And where you have other people who are like, well, they should be doing it this way, and they should be doing it that way, and they put their fingers in everything, and then they just kind of screw everything up, and because they're too smart for it,
Dude,
and so
100%. Guys are like that with girls too sometimes.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Where I'm like, these really smart guys, they're just overthinking things and they get weird. But like the gym guy who's like, hey, what's up? You want to hang out? And the girl's like, all right. Yeah, sure.
Right. This very much, it's like people sometimes just overthink things. Just like follow the system. And don't make it complicated. Hire good people.
Yes. Somebody built a massive company with these principles and processes. Just let them do their thing.
Just let them do their thing. And like that's really where it comes down to. You asked this earlier, like, what's my role? And it's just like hiring good people. It's like you gotta hire people with like good energy. Like a lot of times people make this mistake of like hiring people with experience. Just like, do you want to buy a franchise with your experience? Well, you don't also want to hire somebody with all this experience, because they're going to just come in there and screw everything up, Right. So like if you just hire somebody with like that's coachable, that's good energy, like that's going to get you a lot farther.
I like that.
So funny. I just filmed a training video for our team. Like, so for new onboarders, being like, I've seen hundreds of thousands of people. I've done this many adjustments. I've done it for this many years. Like, I know that in your 2 weeks of experience, you want to change the way we do things, but just don't do it. Just do it. Literally just do it the way that I told you to.
Right.
It's like an entire video about it.
So any advice for small business that if they want a franchise, like what would they need to put in place to get to it?
So that's a really good question, because I get this all the time. I don't do this for a living, but I work with people who do this for a living, where it's like, hey, I have this concept, I want to franchise it. And so over the past like 5 or 6 years, like this has become a crazy industry where like you have what we call franchise sales organizations that go out and try to find the next big concept.
Yeah.
You know, and then they want to bring them under their umbrella and get a piece of the business and sell a bunch of licenses, you know? And so whenever you have your, you know, your master project, your thing, you know, and like what I've found is that usually companies that people want to franchise, the reason that the business is because of them,
Right.
not because of the processes or anything that they put in place. Like people like to do business with them.
Yep.
Right. And so like they are the face of the company, and it's really hard to replicate that. You know, it's really hard to like match that energy if it's your baby, you know, and then all of a sudden you want to go replicate that in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, like how are you going to do that?
Right.
You know? And so, you know, like so the advice that I give to people, you know, even though this isn't necessarily what I do, but if like they get to talking to some of these franchise sales organizations, because those are going to be the people that they talk to, they're not going to give them that advice. They're going to be like,
Right.
give it to me and we'll sell it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And they're just sitting there like, okay, great. Yeah. And they just see dollar signs and they're just like, all right, great. And then like you have like 100 franchisees that you're all of a sudden having to support, and they're calling you. Right. And they're like, how do you do the, you know, that yoga move, or how do you do this? And, you know, what is it that you do again?
Right.
You know, and you can't have that either, you know? And so I typically tell people like, have your friends and family, your customers, or people who are interested, open up in other areas. Replicate it, build a good playbook, have 15 of them open, have 20 of them open, and then give them a piece of the business. Like let them be your spokespeople, you know?
Good, yeah.
And then, you know, because like now, you know, you can replicate it in another city.
Yep.
It's not just, you know, that territory.
Working here,
Yeah. And so, and once you kind of establish that, then you can go to a franchise sales organization, and then they have a better story to tell. And you're not just spending all this money on, you know, consultants and like all this other stuff, you know, like where you're just trying to market your business. So, get a good amount of them open with friends and family referrals in other cities.
Yeah.
Develop a good systems and process. You got to really invest a lot of money and to get it to that point. And you know, you might catch lightning in a bottle, but it's, you know, it's a tough business to do.
Or just hang out with your college buddy and go to West Virginia and
Right,
see what
exactly.
happens. Just wing it.
Just wing it. Yep, that's right.
Are there any weird states out there that you recommend not having a franchise? Like, would there state rules or stuff like that you've come across?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So the blue states are all tough to do business in.
Yeah.
Like, you know, regardless of your political views, they make it tough. And so like California is really hard, you know, like even when it comes to like a very simple business model, you know, like something that you can open up in South Carolina, North Carolina, like in California, you're going to have like a lot of licensing requirements that are going to just delay you even further.
Right.
You know, and then you have obviously employment laws, you know, stuff like that. Like, you know, can you subcontract out work? Can you not? You know, so there's definitely some weird rules. It's to the point where we have what they call registration states. And again, there are 8 states, most of them are blue states, and where most franchisors don't even sell in those states anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you know, and if they do, then it's the last ones to go.
Right.
Like they'll make sure that everything else is built out, and then like, okay, we're opening up
deal with
California.
these,
We're ready for a headache now. Things are too easy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
I could see that. And I would imagine like Florida is probably one of the easiest ones that
No
everyone's
doubt.
like,
Yep.
hey, there's no rules there.
rules.
Go do whatever you want.
Right. Yep. Texas, like, and it's like Texas, you know, and the Carolinas, you know, and then we got obviously Florida, and just like the whole Southeast is like pretty lenient.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just really when you start getting out west, it becomes a little bit tougher. Washington State and Maryland are like the toughest.
Are
know?
they?
Yeah, they're the toughest. I mean, like if I get somebody in Washington State, I'm like, you're going to have to hang out with me for like 2 years, dude. You know, like we're going to be looking at franchises for a long time, because like as soon as something comes up, you only have a really little area in Washington, like Seattle,
Right,
you know, and like right around there. So as soon as something comes up, like people are just buying that little area,
up,
scooped up right there. And so it's, you know, it's hard to find something for people in Washington and Maryland. It's tough.
In New York City, I'd be a little scared of the mob.
Yeah,
Like sometimes I think if I'm going somewhere that I don't really know, there's unwritten rules that I don't really know about. And like even in Canada where I'm from, sometimes people are like, yeah, you don't want to go there. There's like the Hells Angels kind of run that. You're like, oh, okay.
Yep.
Maybe I stay out of that area and go somewhere else.
I had a guy that purchased parking lot striping in New York, and the mob people owned like the paving business, and he was an Indian prince, which is kind of crazy.
Whoa.
And his wife, before they bought the franchise, they went and got married. And he sent me these pictures. These crazy pictures of over in India.
Week-long wedding.
Yes, it was. Yeah, they were gone for like 2 months. Yeah. And he comes back and he purchases a franchise. And he sent me a video of her pushing the parking lot striping thing like down. And I'm like, you have this princess pushing a parking lot striping thing.
I love it.
Yeah, but like he, like right away, like he bought a parking lot striping business, and then New York like implemented these things where they had to like paint the bottom of telephone poles yellow or something, like for safety reasons. And so like he went and like painted all the telephone poles yellow.
Oh,
like the
he
bottom
made bank.
Yeah, and he was making good money, and yeah, he did great.
Worked out well. Yeah. I thought he was like gonna end up in a dumpster somewhere.
Right? Well, I haven't followed up with him.
Now, and then I imagine you have to probably sign NDAs for everything, right? Or how does that?
No, yeah,
really,
yeah. So we don't, like I can talk about it. It really, the NDAs come into play whenever you like start to talk about people's existing businesses, like if they're selling an existing franchise and they're trying to offload it, and like so they don't want you to talk about their numbers and stuff, But like most franchisors, I mean, like we'll have like I had a guy who opened up a concept called Homestretch down in Charleston, and essentially all they do is they try to help people like get in the home stretch of putting their house on the market. So like they'll come in and do paint, landscaping, and like sage and do all this stuff. And like so we had there was a couple that came out or that went to that discovery day like the week before they did, and they were like, hey, you're probably not going to get this, like and I'm telling them like this couple's probably going to buy it, you're going to probably have to look at a different franchise. Well, that couple bailed, and then they got it, and then that couple went and opened up a concept just like it, down in Charleston, but regardless, they don't really have NDAs or really enforce them. It's sometimes a franchisor will do it, but like it's they're just chasing. It's not gonna. Yeah. It's nothing really.
It's hard to go to court with it. Yeah. It seems like
that you're just wasting money.
Well, because even the idea of like I'll hear of like a sauna business or a cold plunge sauna business or something like that that's coming up, and it would be hard to trademark the franchise, like concept, I guess, but the name you could, like Orange Theory, you can trademark the words Orange Theory and maybe their technology with the app, but anybody can be like, hey, we're gonna do running and work out together and measure your heart rate. Right. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people look at it that way, where it's like, okay, what am I really getting? Like, and even a lot of the brands that I show, like if I'm showing you something in Columbia or Charleston, like you probably don't know what the brand is. You probably have never heard of it.
Right.
And that was the way it was for Massage Envy at one point. That's the way it was for Orange Theory at one point, where people were like, all right, like I guess, and then you either, catch lightning in the bottle or you don't, but like, with some of these like sauna and cold plunge ones, I mean, like again, that's a lot of people are jumping on that bandwagon right now, and it's like you really got to have a good differentiator to make that work and make that model work, and it's really expensive, if you're doing it right, so it's a tough business.
Yeah, it's almost the technology on the back end that you have to give you a competitive advantage. Yeah. Like when I think of the Orange Theory software, it's incredible.
Right.
It tracks everything. You cancel. It shows, like you almost don't need to train anybody in it to run the business. You just need to hire a trainer basically.
Right, yeah.
And there's, I guess when I think of some other ones, it's kind of like even Chick-fil-A has incredible software that you can track every single detail from every single store. It'd be like, if for someone to replicate that would be hundreds of millions of dollars just in engineering costs.
Right. And we have like these like home service franchises that will like, there's like a company out there, I can't think of the name of them right now, but they essentially just like take a business and then they just attach the software to it, and they're like, all right, it's a franchise, you know? And it's like, all right, well, that's not really, you haven't really proven anything, you know? Like, you've just bought a software and a business, and you combine the two,
Right.
and you're like, you know, and anybody can do that, you know? Like, anybody can go and buy this software. It's open to anybody, you know? So, you know, like, you get this a lot, like, where, again, like, there's been a mad rush of, like, people just trying to franchise everything, you know? And, like, you almost have to work with a consultant, you know, if you want somebody that you trust that's going to show you, like, hey, these people aren't just like yanking your chain, you know?
Yeah. I mean, after talking to you, I would never do it on my own without a consultant. I don't think.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I did my job.
How do people get a hold of you, and how do they, basically, what do you want? You want them to go to your social media? You want them to go to your website?
I go by the franchise friend. Like, that's my tagline is like, I'm your franchise friend. You know, I'm still working on that. I don't know. What do you think? You think it's good?
We'll get a little jingle for it.
Yeah, we'll get, okay.
I like
Okay.
it.
And so,
I like Chuck Face though. Too.
I like Chuck. You know, don't go to the Urban Dictionary and look at it. I was like,
oh no.
Yeah, I know exactly. Like I was like given this nickname in college. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, I'm gonna run with it. And like, everybody called me Chuck Face. And then like one day, we get the internet guy comes to our house and installs internet. My wife's like, let's see if the internet works. And she goes Google. And she's like, Chuck Face. And then she's like, oh,
no.
It's probably not good for TV. But it's cool. You know, whatever.
Yeah. Now, and then I just have two last things. What are there seminars, books, podcasts? Like, what keeps you sharp in this space, or what are you into?
Oh, that's a good question. So really, what we do is, you know, like, I'll tell people, you know, you'll get a couple different, like, consultants come in different shapes and sizes. All right. So you either get the Tony Robbins type, where they're like really invested in coaching and like helping people get over their fears and like doing that stuff. I am terrible at that. I am the worst at that. And I'll tell people up front, like, you want Tony Robbins?
You want motivation.
You want motivation? I'm going to refer you to somebody else. Okay. Because like, I can't do it. And so what keeps me sharp is owning a franchise. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, like being able to set the appropriate expectations for people, like, this is what I went through and this is what I've done. Like, there's nothing like firsthand experience. And like, I've spent so much money on attorneys, and I've spent so much money on all this different advice. Like, even though my services are free, I'm like, I always tell my wife, like, man, I should be charging $1,000 an hour. Like, how much money I could save people in one conversation, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, the books and the coaching seminars and all that stuff isn't ever my thing. It was never my thing, you know, I just live it. Exactly. And so like, that's kind of been my forte is just like, just doing it and lead by example, and like, just try to be honest with people about like what to expect, you know, getting into business ownership. And that probably cost me a lot of money, you know, it probably does. You know, like, we have consultants that are like, that are like hot blondes. You're really good at motivating people. They're like, you can do it, you know? And I'm like, man, if I just looked like her, I'd be a millionaire.
That's amazing.
Instead, you're just out there saving girls from overdosing and just opening stores with your buddy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you know, just getting by. Just getting by.
And then anybody listening, so if you're looking locally though, if they're in the beauty space and are looking for a spot,
no doubt
they would reach out to you or directly to Image Studios. What are the room sizes? What are some of the things maybe that if they're looking to make that jump?
Yep. So we like big sweet energy. That's kind of
big sweet energy.
Yeah, right. So like you know, those are kind of the two big questions. How much? How big? You know? And so are we talking hookers? Are we talking? We had to go there. We had to do it. You know, so we have larger than usual spaces. Okay, and so they're anywhere from like 115 to 120 square feet. Most suites are going to fall in like the 90 to 100 square feet. So they're a little bit bigger. Okay. But we, you know, like, I just had this conversation before I walked in, like, I had somebody call, and my wife and I have taken on, at the beginning, just like any business, like, you just want to be like, I'll take anybody who's lease, please, you know? And then you kind of get a little full and you're like, we need to make sure we're listening to the right people, you know? And so you got to have a business, you know, you can't just like come in there with a hope and a prayer that people are going to walk to the back of some salon suite and find you, you know? Like we have this girl that does like waxing, and she was doing it like out of a house.
Yeah.
And like, but she has a huge following. It's crazy to me. Like I'll be in there and sitting down. She'll have like 20 people come and see her for waxing. Wow. You know, and I'm like, wow, like, you know, like, but she is constantly and is constantly booked. So you have to have some clients.
Yep.
You know, you have to be able to pay your bills.
Yeah.
I don't like to chase people for money. You know, and so you know, like, you know, the people who are just hustlers, who like understand their business, those are the people that we're looking for. You know, we have a really nice space for you to continue to build your business, but you have to start with a good customer base where they can kind of start to refer you, you know, like more hair people, more waxing people, those types of things. And, you know, because you can stop by and get a Starbucks and go to REI and go to Iron Hill Brewery and like do some fun things when you're
Get a wax job.
Get a wax job, exactly. Yeah.
Dude, I've told this story before, but I used to get my chest waxed sometimes when I was younger, and it was the most painful thing. And I was
painful.
I was like my mom's friend, and she would like go with me, and I would just scream, and they would die laughing, and then they would do it again. And I just look back at myself. I'm like, I could have just shaved, but it, you know, but I just thought like, hey, maybe a smooth chest is
well, it grows back
nice.
thicker, right? Like if you shave, right?
I don't know. Maybe that was my advantage, my secret advantage, having a hairy chest.
Yeah. Has it moved to your back now, or
I see that
up over the
I'm
shoulders?
just shaving it, but I probably need to wax that. That's it.
you need to start popping your collar a little bit?
I need to call your girl who does 20 a day and be like, hey, are you? Because
Need a
maybe she does it. It
consult.
doesn't hurt so bad.
Well,
Maybe that's
so
what
she
can
actually
do.
does sugaring waxing, which is like interesting. Have you ever
What's
seen
that?
So it's like a ball of sugar. It's weird, and it's like a ball, and then like she smooths
rolls
it
it
out,
on you?
rolls it on you, and then she like rips it, and then she puts it in another ball, and she smooths out another space, and it's like supposed to be better for your skin instead of like the hard wax and. You know, so it's supposed to be better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, like it's, you know, I just know how to rent spaces. That's all I know.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah,
a
man,
blast.
this is awesome. Yeah, this is
appreciate
great.
it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
We're here for the health of it.
For the health of it.